I am. I just put the lid for the gin underneath the. So some gin. One shot Campari.
Hey, sideways, Frankie. Hey, sideways, Frankie.
Now you're upside down.
I did try it with less Campari because I like things less bitter, but the color was like all watery and like it just. 1 part sweet vermouth.
Have we started the cocktail chat? Oh my god,
we're on the cocktails already.
Tucci was like using a red vermouth. I don't have a sweet red vermouth. He did specify not to use martini. So like, yeah, I'm using Lily Blanc. Lily Blanc is a very nice sweet vermouth though. I don't usually shake cocktails because I like them alcoholic, so I usually stir them, but I will shake this one. That seems like...
Oh, proper shaker as well. Nice.
Sorry.
Zoom has blanked out the noise.
Wow.
Seems like a lot of noise.
No, Zoom hid it all from us.
Yeah. That's
I need to get orange on go.
Zach, is that your actual skylight behind you? That's super cute. Or is it a Zoom?
Yeah, I'm in a loft.
Okay.
Bedroom.
Oh, fantastic. I didn't know that. That's really sweet.
Yeah. Room, so you can see, like, bay pointed, and I've got that set of 4 on the other side.
Oh, wow. That's really nice.
Put some envy in your room.
Yeah.
It's good for
what are you drinking, Frankie?
White wine with a slice of lemon in it.
Oh, that looks lovely. This looks delicious. And then like a slice of orange. I got some really nice oranges the other day. Without a squeeze. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Anders, I think you could have your own YouTube thing going on here. Cocktails with Anders.
I'd subscribe.
I mean, Negroni is like a fairly unadventurous cocktail. Like I will happily teach you guys how to make like an Arnaud or a Boulevard. Actually, what I should have made is Boulevardier is like the Lucien Godin, man. The Lucien Godin is like a slightly less bitter version of a Negroni that's named after a 1920s Belgian fencing champion.
What's it got in it?
I'm on board.
Why was it named after a Belgian fencing champion?
I think
Sounds
just
like a
because
sort
he
of
was
joke.
so handsome and dapper that like they had to
okay.
name something after him.
Oh my
The
god.
cocktail seemed appropriate.
You were just queuing up to name things after him. Okay.
I
Imagine
mean, the
that
picture
being
of him
like,
in the cocktail book is like quite spoon-worthy, to be honest.
imagine being so handsome that a cocktail after you. That's amazing. That's amazing. What goals? What total goals?
Hey, Mike.
You need to warn us what ingredients we need so we can work along at home and make it as well.
That's a good idea, yeah. Like Bake Off. You could judge us all, Anders.
What's that?
Like Bake Off, you could judge us all.
But it's how you judge a cocktail without tasting it. Like that's completely counterintuitive.
Who has the nicest glassware?
Ooh, I'll
Well, I mean,
definitely
so
do that.
this is a this glassware is from like you're supposed to have like an ice cream sundae sort of thing in this.
Oh,
It's
cool.
like ice cream glassware, not cocktail glassware. But I just think it looks quite nice. So
It's
Is that
beautiful.
British Dash and Run, Michael? Is it tasty?
I haven't tried it yet.
Oh,
Here we go.
A live tasting.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah?
Yeah, that's good.
Does it taste how you'd expect it to taste? From the smell of the nasturtium?
The rum is quite strong as well, so like how it mixes together is a bit unexpected.
Huh?
It's good. It's interesting.
Yeah.
I've just had a lot of story time today because I caught up because I missed a couple of nights and then I just had it all while I was making dinner.
That's a hardcore injection of story time.
Hello.
How you feeling? You okay, hon?
I'm okay, I'm good. Yeah.
hey Lisa, hey Jonas.
Hey, you all right?
Hi, sweet peas.
I
Hello.
Who else we got? Hi, Jonathan. Hey, Bina.
How are you, Frankie?
Chris. Oh,
So, if anyone knows someone that wants a super nice flat in Edinburgh, that's just come on the market to rent.
It's amazing.
Nice hell. Looks nice.
Super nice.
Nice as hell.
Yeah.
Like nicer than hell. Hell is traditionally a little bit.
So, Katie, where in Edinburgh?
A little bit better.
Have you been to Sinful?
Have I been to where?
Sinful.
No, but I am from Edinburgh.
It's in Leith.
Okay. Just
Henderson Street in Leith, close to the shore.
I know lots of people in Edinburgh.
It's really nice.
Some of whom might like a flat. I don't know.
I have a couple of people who reached out, so it was remarkably effective. I was a bit worried that nobody was thinking of moving in these times.
Are you moving, Jonas?
No, I have moved to Sheffield already, and then I let my flat in Edinburgh out since then, but my tenant has moved just today.
Okay. I think the talk of the friendly seagull might have got a few people interested.
I think so too. I think that's the key feature.
I almost moved because of that.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you may have some people interested in Jonas, but like, if you don't, give me a shout because I may know some people in Edinburgh who might, I could ask around because I know some nice people in Edinburgh. Who knows if someone's looking for a flat?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the tricky part is to do a viewing.
Yeah.
Like, how the fuck does that even work with these?
To carry your phone around with you like that.
I think
actually know some people who have been doing that.
I know people who are doing remote viewings.
Yeah.
Or at least like the initial one, and then like maybe
the current sorry, Sharon. I can tell you that the current guidance in Scotland is that if it's been empty for 72 hours, it is definitely no longer infectious.
Good to know.
That's good to know.
That is the guidance that was given from the NHS to the Scottish Government today, and don't tell anyone that I told you, because it hasn't been published yet.
Are we We are recording.
We are recording.
It's fine. It is in our guidance.
Okay.
Which is published.
How are we doing for time, everybody?
Story time.
It might be story time.
It
feels like story time.
Story time?
Seems like story time to me.
It does feel like story time to me as well. So we've got 2 chapters today, both pretty short. So we'll see how we get on with those. I'm gonna mute you all. Right. Mute all. Myself. God, it's a very complicated process with lots of different steps. I think I'm getting the hang of it though. Now. You ready? You steady? I've got Mike Cox in my top corner, which is always one of my favourite things to have there. Look how excited you are. Right. Now, are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. Chapter 6. What the Tree Said. Tristram Thorne was dreaming. He was in an apple tree, staring through a window at Victoria Forrester, who was getting undressed. As she removed her dress, revealing a healthy expanse of petticoat, Tristram felt the branch begin to give way beneath his feet, and then he was tumbling down through the air in the moonlight. He was falling into the moon, and the moon was talking to him. Please, whispered the moon, in a voice that reminded him a little of his mother's. Protect her. Protect my child. They mean her harm. I have done all I can. And the moon would have told him more, and perhaps she did, but the moon became the glimmer of moonlight on water far below him, and then he became aware of a small spider walking across his face, and of a crick in his neck, and he raised a hand and brushed the spider carefully from his cheek, and the morning sun was in his eyes, and the world was gold and green. You were dreaming, said a young woman's voice from somewhere above him. The voice was gentle and oddly accented. He could hear leaves rustle in the copper beech tree overhead. Yes, he said to whoever was in the tree, I was dreaming. I had a dream last night too, said the voice. In my dream, I looked up and I could see the whole forest, and something huge was moving through it, and it got closer and closer, and I knew what it was. She stopped talking abruptly. What was it? Asked Tristram. Everything, she said. It was Pan. When I was very young, somebody, maybe it was a squirrel, they talk so much, or a magpie, or maybe a fishy, told me that Pan owned all this forest. Well, not owned, not like he would sell the forest to someone else or put a wall all around it, or cut down the trees, said Tristram helpfully. There was a silence. He wondered where the girl had gone. Hello? He said. Hello? There was another rustle of leaves from above him. You shouldn't say things like that, she said. Sorry, said Tristram, not entirely sure what he was apologizing for. But you were telling me that Pan owned the forest. Of course he does, said the voice. It's not hard to own something or everything. You just have to know that it's yours and then be willing to let it go. Pan owns this forest like that. And in my dream, he came over to me. You were in my dream too, leading a sad girl by a chain. She was a very sad, sad girl. Pan told me to help you. Me? And it made me feel all warm and tingly and squishy inside, from the tips of my leaves to the end of my roots. So I woke up, and there you were, fast asleep with your head by my trunk, snoring like a pigwidgeon. Tristram scratched his nose. He stopped looking for a woman in the branches of the copper beech tree above him, and looked instead at the tree itself. You are a tree, said Tristram, putting his thoughts into words. I didn't always used to be a tree, said the voice in the rustling of the copper beech leaves. A magician made me a tree. What were you before? Asked Tristram. Do you think he likes me? Who? Pan. If you were the lord of the forest, you wouldn't give a job to someone, tell him to give all possible aid and succour unless you liked them, would you? Well, said Tristram, but before he had decided on a politic answer, the tree had already said, a nymph. I was a wood nymph, but I got pursued by a prince, not a nice prince, the other kind, and, well, you'd think a prince, even the wrong kind, would understand about boundaries, wouldn't you? You would? Exactly what I think. But he didn't, so I did a bit of invoking while I was running, and ba-boom, tree. What do you think? Well, said Tristram, I do not know what you are like as a wood nymph, madam, but you are a magnificent tree. The tree made no immediate reply, but her leaves rustled prettily. I was pretty cute as a nymph too, she admitted coyly. What kind of aid and succour exactly, said Tristram. Not that I am grumbling. I mean, right now I need all the aid and succour I can use. But a tree is not necessarily the obvious place to look for it. You cannot come with me, or feed me, or bring the star here, or send us back to Wall to see my true love. I am certain you would do a remarkable job of keeping off the rain were it to rain, but it is not at present raining. The tree rustled. Why don't you tell me your story so far? said the tree, and let me be the best judge of whether or not I can be of help. Tristram began to protest. He could feel the star moving further and further away from him at the speed of a cantering unicorn, and if there was one thing he did not have time for, it was the recitation of his adventures of his life to date. But then it occurred to him that any progress he had made on his quest so far, he had made by accepting the help that had been offered to him. So he sat on the woodland floor and he told the copper beech everything he could think of. About his love, pure and true, for Victoria Forrester. His promise to bring her a fallen star, not any fallen star, but the one they had seen together from the top of Ditty's Hill. And of his journey into Fairy. He told the tree of his journeyings, of the little hairy man, and of the small fair folk who stole his bowler hat. He told her of the magic candle, and his walk across the leagues to the star's side in the glade, and of the lion and the unicorn, and of how he had lost the star. He finished his story, and there was silence. The copper leaves on the tree shivered softly as if in a gentle wind, and then harder as if a storm were coming. And then the leaves formed a fierce, low voice which said, "If you had kept her chained, and she had escaped her chains, then there is no power on earth or sky could ever make me help you, not if great Pan or Lady Sylvia herself were to plead or implore me. But you unchained her, and for that I will help you." "Thank you," said Tristram. "I will tell you three true things. 2 of them I will tell you now, and the last is for when you need it most. You will have to judge for yourself when that will be. First, the star is in great danger. What occurs in the midst of a wood is soon known at its furthest borders, and the trees talk to the wind, and the wind passes the word along to the next wood it comes to. There are forces that mean her harm, and worse than harm. You must find her and protect her. Secondly, there is a path through the forest, off past that fir tree, and I could tell you things about that fir tree that would make a boulder blush, and in a few minutes a carriage will be coming down that path. Hurry, and you will not miss it. And thirdly, hold out your hands." Tristram held out his hands. From high above him, a copper-coloured leaf came falling slowly, spinning and gliding and tumbling down. It landed neatly in the palm of his right hand. "There," said the tree, "keep it safe, and listen to it when you need it most. Now," she told him, "the coach is nearly here. Run, run!" Tristram picked up his bag and he ran, fumbling the leaf into the pocket of his tunic as he did so. He could hear hoofbeats through the glade coming closer and closer. He knew that he could not reach it in time, despaired of reaching it, but still he ran faster, until all he could hear was his heart pounding in his chest and his ears, and the hiss of air as he pulled it into his lungs. He scrambled and dashed through the bracken, and made it to the path as the carriage came down the track. It was a black coach, drawn by 4 night-black horses, driven by a pale fellow in a long black robe. It was 20 paces from Tristram. He stood there, gulping breath, and then he tried to call out, but his throat was dry, and his wind was gone, and his voice came from him in a dry sort of croaking whisper. He tried to shout, and simply wheezed. The carriage passed him by without slowing. Tristram sat on the ground and caught his breath. Then, afraid for the star, he got back to his feet and walked, as fast as he could manage, along the forest path. He had not walked for more than 10 minutes when he came upon the black coach. A huge branch, itself as big as some trees, had fallen from an oak tree onto the path directly in front of the horses, and the driver, who was also the coach's sole occupant, was endeavouring to lift it out of the way. "Damnedest thing," said the coachman, who wore a long black robe and who Tristram estimated to be in his late 40s. "There was no wind, no storm. It simply fell. It terrified the horses." His voice was deep and booming. Tristram and the driver unhitched the horses and roped them to the oak branch. Then the two men pushed, and the 4 horses pulled, and together they dragged the branch to the side of the track. Tristram said a silent thank you to the oak tree whose branch had fallen, to the copper beech and to Pan of the forests, and then he asked the driver if he would give him a ride through the forest. "I do not take passengers," said the driver, rubbing his bearded chin. "Of course," said Tristram, "but without me you would still be stuck here. Surely Providence sent you to me, just as Providence sent me to you. I will not take you out of your path, and there may again come a time when you are glad of another pair of hands." The coach driver looked Tristram over from his head to his feet. Then he reached into the velvet bag that hung from his belt and removed a handful of square red granite tiles. "Pick one," he said to Tristram. Tristram picked a stone tile and showed the symbol carved upon it to the man. Was all the driver said. "Now pick another." Tristram did so. "And another." The man rubbed his chin once more. "Yes, you can come with me," he said. "The ruins seem certain of that, although there will be danger, but perhaps there will be more fallen branches to remove. You can sit up front if you wish, on the driver's seat beside me, and keep me company." It was a peculiar thing, observed Tristram as he climbed up into the driver's seat, but the first time he had glanced into the interior of the coach, he had fancied that he saw 5 pale gentlemen, all in grey, staring sadly out at him. But the next time he had looked inside, nobody had been there at all. The carriage rattled and pounded over the grassy track beneath a golden-green canopy of leaves. Tristram worried about the star. She might be ill-tempered, he thought, but it was with a certain amount of justification, after all. He hoped that she could stay out of trouble until he caught up with her. It was sometimes said that the grey and black mountain range, which ran like a spine north to south down that part of Fairy, had once been a giant, who grew so huge and so heavy that one day, worn out from the sheer effort of moving and living, he had stretched out on the plain and fallen into a sleep so profound that centuries passed between heartbeats. This would have been a long time ago, if it ever happened, in the first age of the world, when all was stone and fire, water and wind, and there were few left alive to put the lie to it if it was not true. Still, true or not, they called the 4 great mountains of the range Mount Head, Mount Shoulder, Mount Belly, and Mount Knees, and the foothills to the south were known as the Feet. There were passes through the mountains, one between the head and the shoulders, where the neck would have been, and one immediately to the south of Mount Belly. They were wild mountains, inhabited by wild creatures. Slate-coloured trolls, hairy wild men, strayed wodwos, mountain goats and mining gnomes, hermits and exiles, and the occasional peak witch. This was not one of the really high mountain ranges of Fairy, such as Mount Huon, on the top of which is the Stormhold, but it was a hard range for lone travellers to cross nonetheless. The Witch Queen had crossed the pass south of Mount Belly in a couple of days, and now waited at the opening of the pass. Her goats were tethered to a thorn bush, which they chewed without enthusiasm. She sat on the side of the unhitched chariot and sharpened her knives with a whetstone. The knives were old things. The hilts were made of bone, while the blades were chipped volcanic glass, black as jet, with white snowflake shapes frozen forever into the obsidian. There were 2 knives. The smaller, a hatchet-bladed cleaver, heavy and hard, for cutting through the ribcage, for jointing and segmenting. The other a long, dagger-like blade, for cutting out the heart. When the knives were so sharp that she could have drawn either blade across your throat, and you would never have felt more than the touch of the lightest hair as the spreading warmth of your life's blood made a quiet escape, the Witch Queen put them away and commenced her preparations. She walked over to the goats and whispered a word of power to each of them. Where the goats had been stood a man with a white chin beard and a boyish, dull-eyed young woman. They said nothing. She crouched beside her chariot and whispered several words to it. The chariot did nothing, and the witch woman stamped her foot on the rock. "I am getting old," she said to her 2 servants. They said nothing in reply, giving no indication that they even understood her. "Things inanimate have always been more difficult to change than things animate. Their souls are older and stupider and harder to persuade. If I had but my true youth again, why, in the dawn of the world, I could transform mountains into seas and clouds into palaces. I could populate cities with the pebbles on the shingle. If I were young again." She sighed and raised a hand. A blue flame flickered about her fingers for a moment, and then, as she lowered her hand and bent down to touch her chariot, the fire vanished. She stood up straight. There were streaks of grey now in her raven-black hair and dark pouches beneath her eyes. But the chariot was gone, and she stood in front of a small inn at the edge of the mountain pass. Far away, the thunder rumbled quietly, and lightning flickered in the distance. The inn sign swung and creaked in the wind. There was a picture of a chariot painted upon it. "You two," said the witch woman, "inside. She is riding this way, and she will have to come through this pass. Now I simply have to ensure that she will come inside. You," she said to the man with the white chin beard, "are Billy, the owner of this tavern. I shall be your wife, and this," pointing to the dull-eyed girl who had once been Brevis, "is our daughter, the pot maid." Another crash of thunder echoed down from the mountain peaks, louder than before. "It will rain soon," said the witch woman. "Let us prepare the fire." Tristan could feel the star ahead of them, moving steadily onward. He felt as if he were gaining ground upon her. And, to his relief, the black carriage continued to follow the star's path. Once, when the road diverged, Tristan was concerned that they might take the wrong fork. He was ready to leave the coach and travel on alone if that should happen. His companion reined in the horses, clambered down from the driver's seat and took out his runes. Then, his consultation complete, he climbed back up and took the carriage down the left-hand fork. "If it is not too forward of me to inquire," said Tristan, "might I ask what it is that you are in search of?" "My destiny," said the man after a short pause. "My right to rule. And you?" "There's a young lady that I have offended with my behaviour," said Tristan. "I wish to make amends." As he said it, he knew it to be true. The driver grunted. The forest canopy was thinning rapidly. Trees became sparser, and Tristan stared up at the mountains in front of them, and he gasped. "Such mountains," he said. "When you are older," said his companion, "you must visit my citadel high on the crags of Mount Huon. Now that is a mountain, and from there we can look down upon mountains next to which these," and he gestured towards the heights of Mount Belly ahead of them, "are the merest foothills." "Truth to tell," said Tristram, "I hope to spend the rest of my life as a sheep farmer in the village of Wall, for I have now had as much excitement as any man could rightly need, what with candles and trees and the young lady and the unicorn. But I take the invitation in the spirit in which it was given, and thank you for it. If ever you visit Wall, then you must come to my house, and I shall give you woolen clothes and sheep cheese and all the mutton stew you can eat." "You are far too kind," said the driver. The path was easier now, made of crushed gravel and graded rocks, and he cracked his whip to urge the 4 black stallions on faster. "You saw a unicorn, you say?" Tristram was about to tell his companion all about the encounter with the unicorn, but he thought better of it, and simply said, "He was a most noble beast." The unicorns are the moon's creatures, said the driver. I have never seen one, but it is said that they serve the moon and do her bidding. We shall reach the mountains by tomorrow evening. I shall call a halt at sunset tonight. If you wish, you may sleep inside the coach. I myself shall sleep beside the fire. There was no change in his tone of voice, but Tristram knew, with a certainty that was both sudden and shocking in its intensity, that the man was scared of something, frightened to the depths of his soul. Lightning flickered on the mountain tops that night. Tristram slept on the leather seat of the coach, his head on a sack of oats. He dreamed of ghosts and of the moon and stars. The rain began at dawn, abruptly, as if the sky had turned to water. Low grey clouds hid the mountains from sight. In the driving rain, Tristram and the coach driver hitched the horses to the carriage and set off. It was all uphill now, and the horses went no faster than a walk. You could go inside, said the driver. No point in us both getting wet. They had put on one-piece oilskins they had found beneath the driver's seat. It would be hard for me to be wetter, said Tristram, without my first leaping into a river. I shall stay here. 2 pairs of eyes and 2 pairs of hands may well be the saving of us. His companion grunted. He wiped the rain from his eyes and mouth with a cold, wet hand, and then he said, You're a fool, boy, but I appreciate it. He transferred the reins to his left hand and extended his right hand. I am known as Primus, the Lord Primus. Tristram Thorn, he said, feeling that the man had somehow earned the right to know his true name. They shook hands. The rain fell harder. The horses slowed to the slowest walk as the path became a stream, and the heavy rain cut off all vision as effectively as the thickest fog. There is a man, said the Lord Primus, shouting to be heard now over the rain, the wind whipping the words from his lips. He is tall, looks a little like me, but thinner, more crow-like. His eyes seem innocent and dull, but there is death in them. He is called Septimus, for he was the 7th boy-child our father spawned. If ever you see him, run and hide. His business is with me, but he will not hesitate to kill you if you stand in his way, or perhaps to make you his instrument with which to kill me. A wild gust of wind drove a tankard full of rainwater down Tristram's neck. He sounds a most dangerous man, said Tristram. He is the most dangerous man you will ever meet. Tristram peered silently into the rain and the gathering darkness. It was becoming harder to see the road. Primus spoke again, saying, If you ask me, there is something unnatural about this storm. Unnatural? Or more than natural. Supernatural, if you will. I hope there is an inn along the way. The horses need a rest, and I could do with a dry bed and a warm fire, and a good meal. Tristram shouted his agreement. They sat together, getting wetter. Tristram thought about the star and the unicorn. She would be cold by now and wet. He worried about her broken leg and thought about how saddle-sore she must be. It was all his fault. He felt wretched. I am the most miserable person who ever lived, he said to the Lord Primus when they stopped to feed the horses feed bags of damp oats. You are young and in love, said Primus. Every young man in your position is the most miserable young man who ever lived. Tristram wondered how Lord Primus could have divined the existence of Victoria Forrester. He imagined himself recounting his adventures to her, back at Wall in front of a blazing parlour fire. But somehow all of his tales seemed a little flat. Dusk seemed to have started at dawn that day, and now the sky was almost black. Their path continued to climb. The rain would let up for moments and then redouble, falling harder than ever. Is that a light over there? Asked Tristram. I cannot see anything. Maybe it was fool's fire or lightning, said Primus. And then they gained a bend in the road and he said, I was wrong. that is a light. Well spotted, young'un. But there are bad things in these mountains. We must only hope that they are friendly. The horses put on a fresh burst of speed now that their destination was in sight. A flash of lightning revealed the mountains, rising steeply up on either side of them. "We're in luck," said Primus, his bass voice booming like thunder. "It's an inn." Chapter 7. Trigger warning for a little bit of violence to animals, if anyone thinks that they would be unduly distressed by that. There is some coming. Okay, chapter 7. At the sign of the chariot. The star had been soaked to the skin when she arrived at the pass, sad and shivering. She was worried about the unicorn. They had found no food for it on the last day's journey, as the grasses and ferns of the forest had been replaced by grey rocks and stunted thorn bushes. The unicorn's unshod hooves were not meant for the rocky road, nor was its back meant to carry riders, and its pace became slower and slower. As they travelled, the star cursed the day she had fallen into this wet, unfriendly world. It had seemed so gentle and welcoming when seen from high in the sky. That was before. Now she hated everything about it except the unicorn, and, saddle sore and uncomfortable, she would happily have spent time away from the unicorn. After a day of pelting rain, the lights of the inn were the most welcoming sight she had seen in her time on earth. "Watch your step," pattered the raindrops on the stone. The unicorn stopped, 50 yards from the inn, and would approach no closer. The door to the inn was opened, flooding the grey world with warm yellow light. "Hello there, dearie," called a welcoming voice from the open doorway. The star stroked the unicorn's wet neck and spoke softly to the animal, but it made no move, stood there frozen in the light of the inn like a pale ghost. "Will you be coming in, dearie? Or will you be stopping out there in the rain?" The woman's friendly voice warmed the star, soothed her. Just the right mixture of practicality and concern. "We can get you food if it's food you're after. There's a fire blazing in the hearth and enough hot water for a tub that'll melt the chill from your bones." I will need help coming in," said the star. "My leg..." "Ah, poor mite," said the woman. "I'll have my husband Billy carry you inside. There's hay and fresh water in the stables for your beast." The unicorn looked about wildly as the woman approached. There, dearie. I won't be coming too close. After all, it's been many a long year since I was maiden enough to touch a unicorn, and many a long year since such a one was seen in these parts." Nervously, the unicorn followed the woman into the stables, keeping its distance from her. It walked along the stable to the furthest stall, where it lay down in the dry straw, and the star scrambled off its back, dripping and miserable. Billy turned out to be a white-bearded, gruff sort of fellow. He said little, but carried the star into the inn and put her down on a three-legged stool in front of a crackling log fire. "Poor dear," said the innkeeper's wife, who had followed them inside. "Look at you, wet as a water nixie. Look at the puddle under you and your lovely dress. Oh, the state of it, you must be soaked to the bone." And, sending her husband away, she helped the star remove her dripping wet dress, which she placed on a hook near the fire, where each drip hissed and fizzed when it fell to the hot bricks of the hearth. There was a tin tub in front of the fire, and the innkeeper's wife put up a paper screen around it. "How do you like your baths?" she asked solicitously. "Warm, hot, or boil a lobster?" "I do not know," said the star, naked but for the topaz stone on the silver chain about her waist, her head all in a whirl at the strange turn that events had taken. for I have never had a bath before. Never had one? The innkeeper's wife looked astonished. Why, you poor duck. Well, we won't make it too hot then. Call me if you need another copper full of water. I've got some going over the kitchen fire. And when you're done with the bath, I'll bring you some mulled wine and some sweet roasted turnips. And before the star could protest that she neither ate nor drank, the woman had bustled off, leaving the star sitting in the tin tub, her broken leg and its splints sticking out of the water and resting on the three-legged stool. Initially, the water was indeed too hot, but as she became used to the heat, she relaxed and was, for the first time since she had tumbled from the sky, utterly happy. There's a love, said the innkeeper's wife, returning. How are you feeling now? Much, much better, thank you, said the star. And your heart? How does your heart feel? Asked the woman. My heart? It was a strange question, but the woman seemed genuinely concerned. It feels happier, more easy, less troubled. Good. That's good. Let us get it burning high and hot within you, eh? Burning bright inside you. I am sure that under your care my heart shall blaze and burn with happiness, said the star. The innkeeper's wife leaned over and chucked the star under the chin. There's a pet, such a duck it is, the fine things it says. And the woman smiled indulgently and ran a hand through her grey-streaked hair. She hung a thick toweling robe on the edge of the screen. This is for you to wear when you are done with your bath. Oh no, not to hurry, ducks. It'll be nice and warm for you and your pretty dress will still be damp for a while now. Just give us a shout when you want to hop out of the tub and I'll come and give you a hand. Then she leaned over and touched the star's chest between her breasts with one cold finger. And she smiled. A good strong heart, she said. There were good people on this benighted world, the star decided, warmed and contented. Outside, the rain and the wind pattered and howled through the mountain pass, but in the inn, at the sign of the chariot, all was warm and comfortable. Eventually, the innkeeper's wife, assisted by her dull-faced daughter, helped the star out of her bath. The firelight glinted on the topaz set in silver, which the star wore on a knotted silver chain about her waist, until the topaz and the star's body vanished beneath the thick toweling of her robe. Now, my sweet, said the innkeeper's wife, you come over here and make yourself comfortable. She helped the star over to a long wooden table, at the head of which were laid a cleaver and a knife, both of them with hilts of bone and blades of dark glass. Leaning and limping, the star made it to the table and sat down at the bench beside it. Outside there was a gust of wind, and the fire flared up green and blue and white. Then a deep voice boomed from outside the inn, over the howl of the elements. Service! Food, wine, fire! Where is the stable boy? Billy the innkeeper and his daughter made no move, but only looked at the woman in the red dress as if for instructions. She pursed her lips. And then she said, It can wait, for a little. After all, you are not going anywhere, my dearie. This last to the star. Not on that leg of yours, and not until the rain lets up, eh? I appreciate your hospitality more than I can say, said the star, simply and with feeling. Of course you do, said the woman in the red dress, and her fidgeting fingers brushed the black knives impatiently, as if there was something she could not wait to be doing. Plenty of time when these nuisances have gone, eh? The light of the inn was the happiest and best thing Tristan had seen on his journey through Fairy. While Primus bellowed for assistance, Tristan unhitched the exhausted horses and led them one by one into the stables on the side of the inn. There was a white horse asleep in the furthest stall, but Tristan was too busy to pause to inspect it. He knew, somewhere in the odd place inside him that knew directions and distances of things he had never seen and the places he had never been, that the star was close at hand, and this comforted him, but it also made him nervous. He knew that the horses were more exhausted and more hungry than he was. His dinner, and thus he suspected his confrontation with the star, could wait. "I'll groom the horses," he told Primus. "They'll catch a chill otherwise." The tall man rested his huge hand on Tristram's shoulder. "Good lad. I'll send out a pot boy for you with some burnt ale." Tristram thought about the star as he brushed down the horses and picked out their hooves. What would he say? What would she say? He was brushing the last of the horses when a dull-looking pot girl came out to him with a tankard of steaming wine. "Put it down over there," he told her. "I'll drink it with goodwill as soon as my hands are free." She put it down on top of a tack box and went out without saying anything. It was then that the horse in the end stall got to its feet and began to kick against the door. "Settle down there," called Tristram. "Settle down, fellow, and I'll see if I cannot find warm oats and bran for all of you." There was a large stone in the stallion's inside front hoof, and Tristram removed it with care. "Madam," he had decided he would say, "please accept my heartfelt and most humble apologies." "Sir," the star would say in her turn, "that I shall do with all my heart. Now, let us go to your village, where you shall present me to your true love as a token of your devotion to her." His ruminations were interrupted by an enormous clattering as a huge white horse, but he realized immediately it was not a horse, kicked down the door of its stall and came charging violently towards him, its horn lowered. Tristram threw himself onto the straw on the stable floor, his arms about his head. Moments passed. He raised his head. The unicorn had stopped in front of the tankard, was lowering its horn into the mulled wine. Awkwardly, Tristram got to his feet. The wine was steaming and bubbling, and it came to Tristram then, the information surfacing from some long-forgotten fairy tale or piece of children's lore, that a unicorn's horn was proof against poison, he whispered. And the unicorn raised its head and stared into Tristram's eyes, and Tristram knew that it was the truth. His heart was pounding hard in his chest. Around the inn, the wind was screaming like a witch in her madness. Tristram ran to the stable door. Then he stopped and thought. He fumbled in his tunic pocket, finding the lump of wax which was all that remained of his candle, with a dried copper-coloured leaf sticking to it. He peeled the leaf away from the wax with care. Then he raised the leaf to his ear and listened to what it told him. "Wine, my lord?" asked the middle-aged woman in the long red dress when Primus had entered the inn. "I am afraid not," he said. "I have a personal superstition that, until the day I see my brother's corpse cold on the ground before me, I shall drink only my own wine and eat only food I have obtained and prepared myself. This I shall do here if you have no objection. I shall, of course, pay you as if it were your own wine I were drinking. If I might trouble you to put this bottle of mine near the fire to take the chill from it. Now, I have a companion on my journey, a young man who is attending to the horses. He has sworn no such oath, and I am sure that if you could send him a mug of burnt ale, it would help take the chill from his bones." The potmaid bobbed a curtsy, and she scuttled back to the kitchens. "So, mine host," said Primus to the white-bearded innkeeper, "how are your beds here at the back of beyond? Have you straw mattresses? Are there fires in the bedrooms? And I note with increasing pleasure that there is a bathtub in front of your fireplace. If there's a fresh copper of steaming water, I shall have a bath later. But I shall pay you no more than a small silver coin for it, mind." The innkeeper looked to his wife, who said, "Our beds are good, and I shall have the maid make up a fire in the bedroom for you and your companion." Primus removed his dripping black robe and hung it by the fire, beside the star's still damp blue dress. Then he turned and saw the young lady sitting at the table. "Another guest," he said. "Well met, milady, in this noxious weather." At that, there was a loud clattering from the stable next door. "Something must have disturbed the horses," said Primus, concerned. "Perhaps the thunder," said the innkeeper's wife. "Aye, perhaps," said Primus. Something else was occupying his attention. He walked over to the star and stared into her eyes for several heartbeats. "You," he hesitated. Then, with certainty, "You have my father's stone. You have the power of Stormhold." The girl glared up at him with eyes the blue of sky. "Well then," she said, "ask me for it, and I can have done with this stupid thing." The innkeeper's wife hurried over and stood at the head of the table. "I'll not have you bothering the other guests now, my dearie ducks," she told him sternly. Primus's eyes fell upon the knives upon the wood of the tabletop. He recognized them. There were tattered scrolls in the vaults of Stormhold in which those knives were pictured and their names were given. They were old things from the first age of the world. The front door of the inn banged open. "Primus!" called Tristram, running in. "They have tried to poison me!" The Lord Primus reached for his short sword, but even as he went for it, the Witch Queen took the longest of the knives and drew the blade of it in one smooth, practical movement across his throat. For Tristram, it all happened too fast to follow. He entered, saw the star and Lord Primus, and the innkeeper and his strange family, and then the blood was spurting in a crimson fountain in the firelight. "Get him!" called the woman in the scarlet dress. "Get the brat!" Billy and the maid ran towards Tristram, and it was then that the unicorn entered the inn. Tristram threw himself out of the way. The unicorn reared up on its hind legs, and a blow from one of its sharp hooves sent the potmaid flying. Billy lowered his head and ran headlong at the unicorn, as if he were about to butt it with his forehead. The unicorn lowered its head also, and Billy the innkeeper met an unfortunate end. "Stupid!" screamed the innkeeper's wife furiously, and she advanced upon the unicorn, a knife in each hand, blood staining her right hand and forearm the same colour as her dress. Tristram had thrown himself onto his hands and knees and had crawled towards the fireplace. In his left hand he had hold of the lump of wax, all that remained of the candle that had brought him here. He had been squeezing it in his hand until it was soft and malleable. "This had better work," said Tristram to himself. He hoped that the tree had known what she was talking about. Behind him, the unicorn screamed in pain. Tristram ripped a lace from his jerkin and closed the wax around it. "What is happening?" asked the star, who had crawled towards Tristram on her hands and knees. "I don't really know," he admitted. The witch woman howled then. The unicorn had speared her with its horn through the shoulder. It lifted her off the ground triumphantly, preparing to hurl her to the ground and then to dash her to death beneath its sharp hooves, when, impaled as she was, the witch woman swung around and thrust the point of the longer of the rock glass knives into the unicorn's eye and far into its skull. The beast dropped to the wooden floor of the inn, blood dripping from its side and from its eye and from its open mouth. First it fell to its knees, and then it collapsed utterly as the life fled. Its tongue was piebald, and it protruded most pathetically from the unicorn's dead mouth. The witch queen pulled her body from the horn, and, one hand gripping her wounded shoulder, the other holding her cleaver, she staggered to her feet. Her eyes scanned the room, alighting on Tristram and the star huddled by the fire. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, she lurched towards them, a cleaver in her hand and a smile upon her face. The burning golden heart of a star at peace is so much finer than the flickering heart of a little frightened star, she told them, her voice oddly calm and detached, coming as it was from that blood-bespattered face. But even the heart of a star who is afraid and scared is better by far than no heart at all. Tristram took the star's hand in his right hand. Stand up, he told her. I cannot, she said simply. Stand or we die now, he told her, getting to his feet. The star nodded and, awkwardly, resting her weight on him, she began to try to pull herself to her feet. Stand or you die now, echoed the Witch Queen. Oh, you die now, children, standing or sitting. It is all the same to me. She took another step towards them. Now, said Tristram, one hand gripping the star's arm, the other holding his makeshift candle. Now, walk. And he thrust his left hand into the fire. There was pain and burning, such that he could have screamed, and the Witch Queen stared at him as if he were madness personified. Then his improvised wick caught and burned with a steady blue flame, and the world began to shimmer around them. Please walk, he begged the star. Don't let go of me. And she took an awkward step. They left the inn behind them, the howls of the Witch Queen ringing in their ears. They were underground, and the candlelight flickered from the wet cave walls. And with their next halting step, they were in a desert of white sand in the moonlight. And with their third step, they were high above the earth, looking down on the hills and trees and rivers far below them. And it was then that the last of the wax ran molten over Tristram's hand, and the burning became impossible for him to bear, and the last of the flame burned out forever.
They escaped. Yay!
Oh shit.
Oh shit, indeed.
It is growing as a person.
So
and
much
that's
so.
some trouble they've got themselves into.
I like that at a certain point, when asked, the thing that Tristan sees as his story, what he thinks is that he's behaved badly and he needs to make it up to someone rather than winning his true love. That felt like a significant moment.
He was kind of
I
that he woke up with on his face after his dream than he was. Like he treats the horse well, the spider well, the unicorn well, and the star like shit.
But I wonder though, if like he's grown up all his life dealing with animals, but not with girls.
Yep.
You know, like he knows how to treat a horse, he knows how to deal with a sheep, but he doesn't really know how to deal with a girl as if she's a human being.
Yeah.
Because all he really has experience of with girls is like weirdo fucking Penny Dreadful novels.
So his life lesson is to treat women at least as well as he treats a horse.
Yeah.
Start.
I mean,
That's
but if you're a
definitely
farmer, then
improvement.
maybe that's quite well.
I can't believe you disagree with that, Sean.
I mean, I have aspired all my life to be treated as well as a horse. I mean, what can I say?
Well, if someone wants to turn up and give you pats and a rub down and feed you.
I don't know. I've known lots of girls that were into horses. I've never met a
Now
girl
there's
who
enough.
treated me as well as a girl who was into horses treated her horses.
Oh, Anders.
This man.
That wasn't a complaint. I mean, that's a pretty high bar.
We'll take it in turns to whip you around a paddock when this is all over.
Say the nicest things.
Amazing.
Are you coming, Anders? You're coming to poetry night tomorrow night?
Well, I had a look again at Senor Dildo, and it's like terrible rhyming couplets, the best of which are just smart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's overly long. So if I was going to read it, then I'd really have to edit it down for just being smart.
I would support you in that. But it just if you're coming, there's a poem that I will definitely read for you by Paisley Rekdal called "Why Some Girls Love Horses." I think you will enjoy it. Oh God.
On that note, poor unicorn.
Right?
After the eye
I thought that I was expecting to like unmute you all, and there would be this like tidal wave of outrage about the unicorn. Y'all not bothered?
I know it's just a story, but also poor unicorn.
No, I was sad about the unicorn.
Yeah, definitely.
I was sad, but it didn't have a lot of emotional build up to me being like, yes, I love this unicorn. This is the thing I care about most in the story. Like, it's not a super heart-wrenching death for me.
Yeah.
I know it.
After
I
what
haven't
Sean-
fallen in love with the unicorn yet.
After what Sean said, I couldn't express any concern for the unicorn because it is basically a magic horse, and I didn't want to be seen to be treating it similarly emotionally.
I felt bad for the guy who had been trying to sell his goat so that him and his mum didn't starve, and then he got turned into a goat, and then he got turned into a pot maid who got killed, and that's a really shit deal.
Wait, is the pot maid dead?
Pot maid's dead. The real goat is dead.
Oh, I've missed
Probably his mum's
bit
dead as
about
well.
pot
like,
maid being
ultimately.
dead.
Oh, I just remembered a crazy unicorn fact that, well, not really fact, you can't really call it fact.
Yes, I
Crazy
can.
unicorn story thing that I heard when I took my parents to the Stirling Castle.
Oh yeah.
So there was this guy impersonating a court person, and he was telling us about these tapestries with the unicorn being in certain situations and such. And apparently some version of the unicorn has the body of the horse, the tail of a lion, and the head of a goat, and it embodies Christ for some reason, and has the same kind of magical powers of, like healing pudding.
I thought goat references were more tied to
healing powers and such stuff.
Isn't that a chimera? Is that the same thing as a chimera, or is a chimera something different?
No, not quite. It was just a very, very different image of the unicorn. Because it still had the horn on its forehead and all that stuff. It just had a slightly altered image.
What did you say its head
The
was?
chimera, as far as I remember, is a lion with a snake with a something else.
Chimera is also a place. Like, Chimera is a place in Turkey. I've been there.
Oh, is it spelled the same?
Yeah. So there is the thing about it's a mountain, but it's a mountain where there's cracks in the mountain and natural gas comes up, and you can literally go up and light blue flames from the cracks. Like, I've done this. Like, there's like gas that like would be off a hob,
Yeah.
like coming out of the side of the rock, and you can like.
That's badass.
If you light it, there's blue flames come out of the side of the hill.
And you fry your eggs on it.
I don't know how much heat you really got off it because it's quite a small amount of gas, but like that's been the case since classical times. There's just been natural gas escaping from the rocks here.
Now you put it like that, I think I have heard about this before.
There's another place in the Middle East where there's a lot more gas. So there's these pits that have been on fire since the Second World War. There's just natural gas bubbling up through the sand, and someone lit it, and now it's too big to put out. And
But
it's
this
just been
is
sitting there burning for
Mount Chimera in Turkey. Like the whole word chimera is like associated with monstrous combinations of different animal parts. in
and
Western
Burning
culture.
Mountains.
But it's just interesting to me that the name of that comes from a place where there's like an uncanny natural phenomena.
Okay.
Okay.
He's reckoning that came first then?
Yeah, I think so.
Hmm.
I mean, like that the name that it's known by is the ancient Greek name. Like, I mean, a lot of ancient Greek places are not known by their ancient names anymore, or they're known by like Turkish versions of their ancient names. Like Pergamon is Bergama these days, you know, or whatever.
Pokemon.
Yeah. So like, but Kimra is still Kimra in Turkey. So.
Come on.
I love you. Zach, what are you making? Zach's cooking something delicious looking.
Fried rice.
Oh, you motherfucker.
With
That's a good choice.
crispy fried onions.
God, I'm so hungry.
It's a late night snack.
I noticed that Britta's account is no longer Disco Queen.
Yeah, I was logged in on my iPad yesterday, which I'd been doing stuff for work on, and I'd forgotten to change my name.
You were a disco queen at work?
I was Disco Queen at work, yes.
Fantastic.
I thought, fuck it, I'll leave it there. Why not?
Oh, have we got a new person? Have we got someone new? Edgar, are you new? Are you new to Storytime?
Ish, yes. I came briefly a few weeks ago when at Andrea's invitation, and I've been enjoying the recorded session because I'm in a very different time zone. But occasionally, I have a little time in the middle of my workday, so I pop in just to see the faces that I see recorded so often.
Fantastic! Oh, it's so nice to have you along live in that case.
Thank you.
Where are you, Edgar?
Welcome,
I'm in Jamaica, and
Oh, lovely.
I've met a couple of you before by my nickname, Ted. So this is a work computer, so feel free to call me Ted or Edgar. They're both my names.
That's so
I got stuck in Jamaica. I live in San Francisco normally, and I will be here at least for another month. I just found out.
My heart bleeds for you. I feel terrible for you being stuck in Jamaica for another month.
It's a little lonely, but you all do help.
Yeah.
It's not a
I
bad
mean,
place.
for reals, I hope you are okay, and I'm sure that is rough.
I am okay. I feel very safe from a COVID perspective, and I'm well cared for from a quarantine perspective.
Yeah. Good. Oh well, you know, anytime you come along, always lovely to have you.
Show us your sunshine.
Would you like to see? It's a little overcast right now, but I would if you want.
Yes, please.
I have two good things to show and tell. There'll be a bit of a hiccup while I change the internet.
This is so exciting. Guys, we're going on holiday to Jamaica. It's happening right now.
Traveling the world. Who knew?
Through the power of fairy stories.
That's so true. Fairy stories and Boom, the two most
Frankie
travel agencies.
Oh.
Hold on. Okay, right. Hold on. I'm going to spotlight.
Right there.
Yeah, let's zoom in if you want.
Oh.
Yep.
Holy shit.
Goodness.
Just immense.
That's my bedroom
Ah.
there.
Oh,
the balcony.
That's amazing. Oh, I'm so glad you're like trapped in this lovely place. What are you doing there? Were you on holiday or are you working? Or what?
I came down to visit because a dear old friend of mine organized a Burning Man inspired event here, and I've never been. So I had about a week before and about a week after the event that I arranged to be here to just explore the island, go dive off into the mountains and meet Jamaicans, and because the thing was like at an all-inclusive resort, and I wanted to feel the country too. And then while I was here, the world fell apart in so many ways, and the States was growing exponentially. And I thought, there are 7 cases in Jamaica. I think it's safer for me to stay.
Yeah.
I was prepared that that might be a multi-month thing, and indeed it ended up being a multi-month thing. So I'm going to put you all down and then show you my one other show and tell bit.
Oh my god.
Because I have been exploring different ways to get things here, and today I found a hookup for a local fisherman.
Oh god.
He brought me
I better be watching this. Are you watching this?
He brought me a red snapper, which I am so very looking forward to cooking tonight.
How are you going to cook it?
Oh
my life.
My god, look at that.
Freshly caught today red snapper.
Oh my god, what are you going to do with it?
How are you planning to cook?
I will probably fillet half of it because it's big enough to do that, to cook another day and freeze it. And then the other half I'll either deep fry or bake with garlic, and it's like so pretty. It's about I don't know, 1.5 kilos.
I mean, that's a fucking big red snapper.
It's a big fish.
It's a big fucking fish.
Good contacts.
Yeah, I also picked up bananas today.
I love them.
So there you go. Love from Jamaica. Thank you for bringing love to me.
Hey, anytime. Jesus, that fish. God, I love seafood.
Fruit, though. Oh.
And I do so wish, hope against hope, that I could have shared it with you all.
Yeah.
You can via photos. You could.
Yes. Yeah, like when you cook it, like post a picture in the Storytime group.
Sure.
I wanna see that shit.
Sounds good.
You want to salivate a bit more, do you?
Always.
That's the thing, man. Like, filleting fish, always, like, you waste so much of it. But when you've got one person and such a large fish.
Exactly.
Like, for real.
Yeah. I do have a few neighbors, including,